Will you come to the Bower or the free boundless ocean where stupendous waves rolling thunder?
Hi everybody, this is a quick disclaimer and a little bit of history for this video. So in this video, I'm showing off the uniforms of what's called the Lafayette Battalion, which was the 2nd battalion of the 2 battalions under Fannon's command at Goliad during the Texas Revolution. The 1st Battalion, known as the Georgia Battalion, and then the Lafayette Battalion, known as the 2nd Battalion. Each battalion consisted of about 6 to 8 infantry companies. There was a mounted rangers company in the Georgia Battalion, and also artillery would have been attached to these 2 battalions. So during the time of the Battle of Clodo Creek and the massacre, which is what we portrayed this past weekend and where it got all this footage from, the Georgia Battalion had been sent out to Refugio and Victoria to go and evacuate the citizens there, and they got attacked by some local Tejanos and went and chased them around, didn't report back to Fannin, and so they were kind of out and about and got attacked separately by Urrea's army. So it was primarily the Lafayette Battalion that was a part of the Battle of Clodo Creek and the Goliad massacre. Of course, the Georgia Battalion was some of them were brought back for the massacre as well. So it wasn't just Lafayette Battalion, but Lafayette Battalion was primarily the primary unit during the Battle of Clodo Creek. The Lafayette Battalion consisted of all of the uniformed units. Those units would consist of the New Orleans Grays, which were also called the San Antonio Grays, or Mobile Grays at this time, the Kentucky Mustangs, the Alabama Red Rovers, and there was a unit in the Georgia Battalion that also was uniformed in guns but not in clothing. The rest of the men, which was the majority of the men at Goliad, would have been ununiformed, which I did a video about the ununiformed units at Goliad a couple months ago. So in this video, I wanted to get more. I was wanting to get footage of the officer of the Kentucky Mustangs and of the New Orleans Grays, but I sadly was not able to do that. I also was thinking about doing the Red Rovers, but I also did not have time to get the Red Rovers. If you want any more information about them and the history of them, I'll have that linked below, and hopefully I can get a video of them eventually, and hopefully get more videos of what I want to do. But I did get a lot of good videos this weekend. So in this video, you will see the infantrymen of the Mustangs and the Grays, the officer, an ununiformed officer, which is a part of Sprague Squad, which is what we portrayed this past weekend, and Colonel Fannin, which I'm very happy to get footage of for that. So enjoy the video.
Where the mermaids are seen and the wise tempest gathers to love there in the green, the dear land of our fathers. Will you come? Will you come to the Bower?
My name's Aaron Davis. I'm portraying an average New Orleans Gray. At this point, we probably would have been referred to as a San Antonio Gray. Whenever the Texas Revolution started, there was a call that went out for all people to come and help the struggle for Texas independence, and one of the units that answered the call was the New Orleans Grays. We were formed up in New Orleans. The 2 companies shipped out differently. One company shipped out and took a passenger vessel through the Gulf and landed in Texas. The other one landed in Louisiana, in Natchitoches, Louisiana, and they marched from Natchitoches to Nacogdoches, and then from Nacogdoches they continued on the El Camino Rio Trail by horseback. The 2 companies of New Orleans Grays, they fought in both the taking of the Presidio here, later to be called Fort Defiance. They also took part in the Battle of Behar. The New Orleans Grays were also involved in the Alamo Massacre and also the Goliad Massacre. So their survival rate was extremely low, which is a fascinating and memorable part of the New Orleans Grays. The reason why they later became called the San Antonio Grays is because they there was additional gray units, gray uniformed units that fell in with them from all different locations and states. The uniform that you see today is not the complete New Orleans Gray uniform. This is something that you would have seen at Fort Defiance whenever they abandoned the fort. So I'm wearing my roundabout We don't know for sure what the gray uniforms looked like for the New Orleans Grays whenever they left. So this is modeled after a lot of what the militia and regular army uniforms would have looked like if they would have went to New Orleans, commissioned a fine militia roundabout or a fine militia coatee. We have some gentlemen that have the coatees. And then you would have seen some broad fall trousers, common of the militia of the time period. The shoes would have been your common shoe that you would have had because these were regular men going out and volunteering and standing up. Because they were militia and they were volunteers, their armaments and their accoutrement would have been something that you would have been able to purchase for militia from any of the major cities. So they would have been um, surplus military arms and surplus military equipment. So you would see your standard surplus boxes from years gone by. This is my Springfield 1795. This would have been a state-of-the-art piece of equipment whenever it came out. This is actually the first weapon system produced by the U.S. Arsenal, Springfield Arsenal, and domestically produced for U.S. Military use. So that is what that is. And you would have had your bayonet in its scabbard. You would have had a cartridge box for your cartridges. And the cartridge boxes have wood inserts to hold your cartridges upright. And then below that, so there's your wooden insert. And then below your wooden insert, you would have a tin insert that was able to hold what are called arsenal packs, which is how your ammunition typically would be issued to you with the muskets. The reason I'm not wearing the issued trousers is because by the time that they abandoned Fort Defiance, their uniforms were getting skimped and scrappy, and we know that at many points the grays were very hard to tell that they were the original grays because they were bits and pieces of their uniform. We no longer have the sealskin caps. So a lot of times the trousers are running threadbare, and we know that by accounts, because they were garrisoned here and they had barracks, a lot of them were taking the tents that they weren't using and cutting them up and making shoddy trousers. So that's why I have some canvas trousers that are poorly made and not very well fitting, because I have run through my trousers and need something to cover my legs.
Will you come to the land of O'Neill and O'Donnell, of Lord Lucan of old, and to the immortal O'Connell, where Brian chased the Dane and St. Patrick the Bearman, and whose valleys remain still most beautiful and charming? Will you come? Will you come to the Bower?
Good morning, my name is Jeremy Lacrone. I'm representing one of the Kentucky Mustangs that were part of the Lafayette Battalion here at Presidio La Bahia. The Kentucky Mustangs were generally uniformed. They came from Kentucky. They wore beaverteen wool coats. Most of them had either civilian trousers or an original issue trousers, civilian vests, civilian hats. Most of them carried rifles. The rifle that I have is an 1803 Harper's Ferry rifle. It was actually the first type of rifle that was issued to the U.S. military. Along with the rifle, we had our basic kit of a shot bag and powder horn. Every soldier would also carry a canteen.
You can visit Denver and the storied Blackwater, where Monroe met Monroe and his chieftains did slaughter, where the lambs sport and play.
Hello, my name is Jordan Anderson. I'm the site manager of San Felipe de Austin State Historic Site, and today I'm here at Presidio La Bahia in Goliad to assist with the Battle of Coleto Creek and the Goliad Massacre event that's taking place. While we're here, we're representing Sprague's Squad, which was a group of volunteers that came from the United States. They passed through Nacogdoches, were then commissioned into the Auxiliary Corps. They then advanced to Washington on the Brazos, received some supplies, and then most of that company disbanded. Remnants of that company then continued south to San Felipe, and met with the provisional government, where they were then reorganized with Samuel Sprague appointed as lieutenant. They were given the task of joining the garrison here at Goliad, well, moving to Goliad at least, and then they were going to assist with the attack on Matamoros. They arrive here in February, right before the Alamo comes under siege, and there's only about 9 men in the squad as a whole. They do participate in the Battle of Coleto Creek. That is where they surrendered to the Mexican forces, and of the 9 members, 3 of them were able to escape the coming massacre. It is noted in the provisional government that Sprague's Squad is referred to as a group of volunteers from Pennsylvania. Samuel Sprague was the only one from Pennsylvania himself. The others were from all over the place, just like most of the volunteers here. All sorts of places, not just one.
On the mossy all over, from those bright golden views to enchanting Ross Trevor, will you come, will you come to...
Hi, my name is Cameron Lyman, and this weekend I am portraying Colonel James Walker Fannin. Fannin was a native of Georgia. He came to Texas, as many men did, to fight in the Revolution. The fact that he had prior military experience, that is, a little over a year at the West Point, U.S. Military Academy at West Point, they saw fit that he might be a good officer, and they put him in charge of the garrison here. Over 300 men. Sadly, Fannin did not have very much military experience outside of the academy, and his choices in leadership ultimately led to the deaths of many of his garrison. The way I'm dressed today is typical of an officer in the U.S. military around that time, or a militia officer. I'm wearing a sealskin cap, as we know that Fannin was wearing a cap. We don't know what it looked like, but it was at least a cap. Joseph Spahn talks about his execution, and he notes a bloody cap laying on the ground after he is shot. So we know he was wearing a cap at least. We believe he is also wearing a coat of India rubber, which would be a raincoat. I'm not wearing that right now, but the coat that I am wearing is that of a U.S. officer, typical of the infantry. Really a junior officer's coat, but it's going to work for this weekend. My sword is a model 1830 U.S. officer saber, or sword, and it's carried on a folded leather belt with a typical sash that you would see an officer wearing at this time. My pants are also of the military pattern. At the time of the Goliad massacre, Fannin was separated from his men and summarily executed on his own. The men were then marched out of the fort and shot in several groups. Very sad day, of course, here at Presidio La Bahia.
You can see Dublin city and the fine groves of Blarney.